The morning in Tiruparapu shimmered with a damp, electric promise. SlumG hefted his backpack, the straps biting into his shoulders, and stepped out beneath the dripping palms, breath mingling with the steam of river stalls frying dough and the distant roar of the waterfall. Real, he told himself. The way you remind yourself your own feet are planted. Tuk-tuks jittered past, their engines coughing, and Overkill Master 288 beckoned him from a spice cart, face sun-bright, offering buttermilk and a story that might have been true. But as SlumG paused for coconut with Smidibos, who sliced the fruit with a practiced hand and a melancholy smile, he caught Makondis grinning from the corner, waving bread like a wand, insisting it was time to get a little muddy, to taste the real wild. For a moment, it was only this: the slap of sandals on wet stone, the sharp tang of fresh coconut, the hope that somewhere in this chorus of familiar strangers and chat-fueled legends, he'd find something not just worth streaming, but worth believing. Makondis, cheeks flushed with excitement and not a hint of worry, nudged SlumG toward the slippery riverside, insisting that every real adventure began with wet feet and a little risk, just up to your knees. He promised, for legend's sake. Yet as SlumG hesitated on the mossy stone, chat erupted. Dr. Henry dared him to ride a crocodile to the real island, and étrange creation, in his thick French, conjured up the croissant-shaped isle, swearing he'd glimpsed it through the mist. Was it myth, map, or a trick of the heat? Overkill Master 288 called out, offering double buttermilk as fuel for bravery, and Smidibos, steady as ever, pressed a coconut slice into SlumG's palm. Reassurance from the one local who seemed to know which stories mattered. The waterfall's roar grew distant as the digital chorus swelled, their encouragements and dares twining around SlumG's senses until he couldn't quite tell if the muddy water lapping his toes was real or just the first step onto an island no map would ever show. For a heartbeat, his journey was suspended between the slap of sandals on stone and the wild undertow of invention. The line between what he saw and what they imagined, gone as soft as river fog. The air snapped taut. 3 uncles planted themselves between SlumG and the river, their shirts stiff with starch and voices cutting through the humidity. No filming! Illegal! It was as if the jungle had coughed up its own gatekeepers, real as the sweat on his brow, yet their faces already blurred at the edges by the quicksilver churn of chat. Makondis materialized at his shoulder, smiling with such casual warmth that for a dizzy moment, SlumG wondered if the uncles might melt away in laughter. But their frowns only deepened, anchoring the scene in something stubbornly solid. Smidibos shuffled forward from his coconut stall, eyes glinting beneath his sun hat, and, without a word, pressed a second slice of coconut into SlumG's hand, a silent promise that he was not alone. Chat's wild theories. They're just hustlers. Offer them buttermilk. Show your toes. Tumbled over reality, thickening the riverbank tension until SlumG could feel his own pulse flickering between worlds. One where a scam might ruin his day, and another where every threat became just another story, already halfway to legend. But then the air shifted. Makondis, somehow both at SlumG's elbow and nowhere in sight, leaned in with a lopsided grin and produced from his infinite pack a day-old bread roll, offering it to the nearest uncle with a wink. The uncle hesitated, his hand frozen mid-gesture, perhaps thrown by the casual warmth or the sudden intrusion of a foreigner's ritual into his world. In that pause, Dr. Henry's voice cracked through the static, pitching an absurd question about toe subs, and the scene buckled at its seams. Étrange creation, sunburned and earnest, waved a battered guidebook and tried to broker a piece in fractured French babbling about croissant-shaped islands and donations, his accent swirling around the river like the morning mist. Smidibos, now firmly at SlumG's side, pressed the coconut slice deeper into his palm. A quiet gesture, but it pulsed with the steady reality of flesh and fruit. For a heartbeat, the uncles seemed to waver, their authority flickering, as if the digital tide was real enough to nudge them back. SlumG caught himself laughing, half with relief, half in disbelief, not certain which world he'd just been rescued into. Only that it was this patchwork of kindness and chaos that kept him moving forward. One foot in myth, one in mud. Past the uncles, the world staggered sideways. SlumG found himself on a cracked rise overlooking the harbor, the salt air sharp as a slap, but the sounds around him already slipping strange. Orionfly, that lighthouse apprentice with sand caught in his cuffs, pressed a battered thermos of tea into SlumG's hands and spun a yarn about ghost ships that only appeared at sunrise, their horns echoing like laughter from some other dimension. Children tumbled down the slope, eyes wide, asking his name.